Murder and Such contains true stories about murders, the macabre, true crime, serial killers, and other dark subject matter. This includes adult themes, explicit language, descriptions of gore, violence, and other information provided by news articles, witness testimony, and public record. Murder and Such is not intended for all audiences, and although warnings will be set in place, listener discretion is still advised.
Hey guys, it's Hunter. First of all, I wanted to apologize for skipping last week's episode. I know there's been some sort of inconsistencies when it comes to me releasing the actual big boy episodes, but I usually make my way back around eventually. And also, since the last episode that I've released, it's officially been 1 year since the show has gone solo. So thank you to all of you who have stuck around through my aforementioned inconsistencies, and for all of the amazing feedback that you've given me with the new format for the show. To be honest, yeah, this show has changed a lot. Hell, even the promo that I've released has a mention about the first episodes being, somewhat humorous, but after episode 51, it takes a much more serious take on true crime. And I wouldn't be here if it hadn't been for all of your positive affirmations and undying loyalty, if I can even say that. So thank you for telling a friend, thank you for sharing the new episodes, and a massive thank you for all of your support. Now, for support, I'm going to go ahead and get the housekeeping out of the way right now. And it's a lot, so here are the Patreon shoutouts. I would love to thank Sarah Pancake, Ellie Keys, Sarah Lehman, Katie Howell, Aaron Albertson, Jessica Velasquez, Shelby Zerbal, Kat Pointing, and Angel Renee for jumping on the Patreon page at the $1 level. And I would also love to thank my new executive producers, Casey Jones and Brad Hyatt. And another thank you to my patrons who have actually upped their pledge to the executive producer status as well, and that includes Erica Summers, Danielle Longmore, Jenna Kagawa, McKenna Johnson, Rambo Stanley, Heather Wright with the Nature vs. Narcissism podcast, Ariel Safir, and Kyle Wesley. So thank you all very much for helping fund the back end of the show, and as I always say, keep this shit show afloat. Now, if you aren't a part of the Patreon team, you can join by visiting patreon.com/murderandsuch, and you can donate just $1 an episode, and if you donate at the executive producer level, you'll be receiving a shout out at the end of each and every episode. Not to mention, I've also been a lot more active on the Patreon page lately, and each patron receives a $10 discount on the brand new shirts that I've posted all over Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Good old Jeff. But if you're not following me on there, you really should. The show's handle is @MurderandSuch. And don't worry, you can still order a shirt even if you don't want to join the Patreon page. Just check out the Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook for more information. And the new design itself is one that I actually made, and I'm kind of in love with it, and I've gotten a lot of really good feedback, and the shirts are selling fast, so grab them while you can. It features the lovable trash panda I've so eloquently named Jeff. So go check out the social media platforms and order yourself a shirt. But I thank you again to all of my new patrons, my existing patrons, and I thank you for listening to this episode. I'm glad you've taken the time out of your day to listen, and hopefully this episode will make you question a couple of things. Oh, and before I actually dive into this episode, I would love to extend a heartfelt thank you And the most sincerest of good thoughts to Jason for taking time out of his day to reach out to me. I appreciate you, and I'm proud of you, Jason. Thank you again. Now, this episode will be a little bit different, and to be honest, after the last episode, different may not be the worst thing in the world. We're going to be talking about social media once again. Well, to an extent, I should say. Apps. There's a fucking app for everything these days. Need your credit score? Credit Karma works great for that. You want to make some music? I actually use GarageBand for a number of different songs that you'll hear as the background music in my episodes. Want to check your internet speed? Speed Test by Ookla works great. Do you want to Photoshop Ted Cruz onto a still image to advertise your new t-shirt design? I used Procreate for that one. But as I've mentioned previously, we are more connected now than we ever have been in the history of the world. Of course, I'm gonna sound old as hell in this episode, but my first cell phone would be classified as a weapon or a brick these days. A good old-fashioned Nokia 5190 track phone. When I was doing research to find out which phone it actually was, there was a listing on Mercari's website saying, quote, "Rare vintage Nokia 5190 cell phone with a price tag of $42. Yeah, vintage that's one way to, yeah, okay, whatever, Jesus Christ. But my next one, I thought I was on top of the world because it was a Nokia 3510. I thought I was king shit of fuck mountain because this one had a color screen and also included the game Skydiver on it. Granted, that was also back when they would set a limit on how many text messages you could send per month, and if you went over, you literally got nickeled and dimed to death. And I still think that I owed Midwest Wireless like $400 before they were bought out by Alltel, if you guys can remember that company, and then it was bought out by Verizon. As you can imagine, the technology has changed over time, but back in my day, we didn't have cameras on our telephones. We didn't have the Twitters, the Snapchats, and if we wanted to check MySpace, we had to do it on our computers instead of our Hello phones. Free calling in the nights and weekends as well. As it always does with technology, things change. It seemed that everything started shifting smarter. The BlackBerry came out and people were kind of losing their collective minds over a cell phone that had a full QWERTY keyboard. But now, when's the last time you've heard of a BlackBerry phone, let alone a Nokia? It kind of takes some of us older listeners a bit to think about that, huh? I know that Nokia they had the Windows phones, which obviously those really didn't last very long, and the last BlackBerry I saw that came out was using the Android operating system, and it did not survive Jerry-Rig Everything's bent test. But back to it, apps. On January 9th of 2007, a young man by the name of Steve Jobs had gotten on stage and announced, quite possibly, the future of what cell phones were going to be able to do. That's when he held up and announced the original iPhone. People's minds were practically blown at that time. A phone that didn't have any buttons for texting, everything that was just on a screen, one that had built-in Wi-Fi. Sure, there was a touch-enabled phone before it by LG called the Prada, and yes, as in the actual Prada clothing brand, so of course it came with a much more expensive price tag. But this was something totally different. This was sleek and sexy, and it only had a couple of tactile buttons on it for the volume and home button, but it pretty much took the tech world by storm. And it first released 13 years ago on June 29th of 2007 at a retail price of $499 US, which adjusted for inflation is about $625 in today's money, and it came in two sizes, the 4GB and the 8GB. But the thing that really helped Apple shoot themselves in the foot was the fact that it was only being carried at select AT&T retailers. But despite that, thousands and thousands of people lined up at the doors of AT&T retail stores to get their hands on this sleek, new smartphone. It was the coolest damn thing at the time, even though I didn't really give a damn about it, but it took one of the most popular music devices on the planet, which was the iPod, and crammed it inside of a cell phone. It had a camera, you could draw on it, you could listen to This Ain't a Scene, It's a Goddamned Arms Race by Fall Out Boy, and just do shit that people never thought possible. To call it revolutionary would be a severe understatement. And on July 10th of 2008, Apple would release the one thing that none of us could really imagine going without these days: the App Store. Sure, there's also the Google Play Store for Android, but the App Store kicked off quite possibly the largest marketplace ever built, and Apple absolutely nailed it. With their operating system, companies were petitioning developers to make them an app that people could install on their device. You could still check Facebook with the Safari browser, but to just tap on an app and get brought to a new interface was pretty revolutionary. You may remember the words, "There's an app for that." And most apps, even in the last decade, have made their debut on the Apple App Store and later came to Android devices. Instagram was the first one that I could remember downloading as soon as I heard that it was available on Android devices, because before then it was exclusive only to just iPhones. But today, there are 2.2 million apps on the Apple App Store, and there's 2.8 million on the Google Play Store. But more recently, I'm sure that you've heard of a game called Fortnite. Well, in the last week, the game's publisher, Epic Games, had filed a lawsuit against both Apple and Google for removing the Fortnite app on their storefronts because Epic figured out a way to get people to spend their money with them directly and completely circumvented the process of purchasing in-game currency through Apple and Google. That way they could reap in 100% of the revenue and didn't have to pay the 30% fee to Apple and Google. But if it hadn't been for Apple, the App Store, and the development of modern-day smartphones, you most likely wouldn't even be listening to me talking, and most of us wouldn't even know what the hell a podcast even was. And in case you were wondering, you can thank Apple for the name podcast, because podcasts have been around since before the iPhone, and people would actually download them to their iPod, thus giving them an iPod broadcast, aka a podcast. But be sure to go ahead and go to the Apple Podcast app and drop me a 5-star review for all of this useless information. I'm a nerd, but you know this already. So yes, modern day smartphones are honestly, pardon my language, they're fucking crazy compared to the Nokia that I had back in 2002. You've got a smartphone, your grandma has a smartphone, your niece and nephew have a smartphone, even your damn car is probably smart enabled. So again, we're all connected, and we have the entire world's information at our fingertips. And I've seen a lot of people concerned about COVID-19, which Apple and Google have introduced their own version with their health monitoring to be able to track your location if you enable COVID tracking with a third-party app so they can better do contact tracing. But with COVID, a lot of people also think that when Bill Gates actually develops the vaccine, he's going to be able to microchip our penises and vaginas, When that's finally said and done, but they fail to realize that our phones are constantly tracking our location with one way, shape, or form. Whether you have location services turned on for DoorDash, Facebook, TouchTunes, or even with cellular triangulation, you're pretty much already microchipped, and you probably miss that old Motorola Razr that's sitting in a box in the garage. But there's one app that's available right now that might not be in the near future, and that one is called TikTok. Now, TikTok has become massively successful amongst the younger Gen Z and millennial crowds. Short-form videos posted on there by anybody who downloads the app, and I'll be honest, I actually downloaded it last week to try to figure out what all the craze was about, and some of the stuff on there is actually pretty damn funny. There's so many ways that you can express yourself, and you can be just as candid as you want, or just make something that people will appreciate or laugh about. Now, the future of TikTok is somewhat uncertain. As of August 6th of 2020, President Donald Trump has issued an executive order wanting to ban TikTok from being able to be downloaded and used by its 800 million users that already have it installed. The reasoning has been that he says it's a threat to our national security due to the fact that TikTok is owned by a Chinese company named ByteDance. However, many security analysts have stated that ByteDance and TikTok as a whole only gather about as much information as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and is not a threat to our national security. Now, I'm not going to go on too much of a political tangent, but a ton of speculation as to why Trump wants to ban TikTok is due to the fact that prior to Donald Trump's Tulsa, Oklahoma rally that was originally scheduled for June 19th of 2020, which is also known as Juneteenth, which is now a national holiday celebrating the emancipation and liberation of African American slaves after the Union soldiers arrived in Galveston, Texas on June 29th of 1865, learning that slavery had been abolished. But Trump later pushed the date back to the following day on June 20th. Suffice it to say, TikTok users weren't too thrilled about that, considering the vast majority of them are of the younger generation. So they literally band together and registered for the free tickets to the event, and in all, somewhere between 800,000 to 1 million users had registered for tickets with the official Donald Trump campaign website to attend the Tulsa rally. To the point where President Trump's campaign had to build a second stage outside of the 19,000-person venue as an overflow crowd for him to give additional speeches after he was done with the main stage. But then the day came, and according to the Tulsa Fire Department, out of the almost 1 million people who had registered to go to the event in the midst of a global pandemic, the venue only saw a little less than 6,200 people. And a good number of those people were also campaign staffers, Secret Service, venue workers, and the like. Ultimately, they tore down the second stage as there wasn't a single person attending the overflow crowd. So despite security advisors saying that TikTok is not a threat, you can almost imagine why there is now an ultimatum on the president's desk to ban an app that kind of made it really embarrassing for him. But I digress. This is just purely speculation. But TikTok has also been used as a platform to get other apps or programs into the public spectacle. There's one app that's seen a ton of TikTok users making their videos while using the app and finding some quite horrific things. But as always, my name is Hunter, and you're listening to Murder and Such, and this is episode 68. Randonautica. What is Randonautica? Well, you may remember 2016 brought us the highly profitable app Pokemon Go. Sure, it's a lot of fun, but a lot of news articles came out in a short amount of time about people walking into traffic, playing Pokemon Go while driving, But another thing that really pissed people off was trespassing onto private property and these goddamn kids being on my lawn when they shouldn't be. Told you I'm getting old. But Randonautica is an app that uses your current location and sends you into an unknown area or a place that may not be familiar to you. Hence the name Randonautica or Random Navigation, which usually with the Nautica it's associated with sea exploration. But users of Randonautica are known as randonauts. Think of that kind of like astronauts or cosmonauts. And on the Randonautica website, it says, quote, "What is randonauting? Randonauting is the act of using the Randonautica app to generate truly random locations sourced with quantum entropy. The users can then choose to adventure to these locations to see what they find. They often discover that what they see lines up with their intention, which is what they're thinking about when they generated that point. It's a way to mindfully explore the world around them. There are two main parts to randonauting: exploring blind spots or places nearby that are outside of your conscious awareness, and experimenting with the mind-matter interaction, the hypothesis that consciousness can influence the distribution of those random numbers." End quote. Now, the part that really sticks out to me the most is the theory of intent. Let's face it, you're listening to a show called Murder and Such. You're interested in morbid topics and the sinister parts of humanity. If you have the app installed on your phone or you're thinking about having the app installed, what would you hold in your mind as your intention? Tragedy? Sorrow? Fear? Or would you be thinking about something similar to beauty, elegance, adventure, the unknown? Now, personally, I think a lot of people would be more like the movie Stand By Me and maybe want to see a dead body. But when you first use the app, it brings you to a long disclaimer about what randonauting is and sends you to a YouTube video. And the next thing is the tenets of randonauts, almost like kind of a code of conduct. And the 9 tenets are seeing in the dark, dedication to exploring the uncertainty and blind spots of the world around us, venture with mindfulness, paying attention, practicing safety and situational awareness, be sincere, show compassion and willingness to understand oneself and the community, high vibes intent, be luminous in thought and strive to radiate a positive mindset, value inner life, appreciation towards the self as the catalyst for an effect on the external environment, bridge culture gaps, share experiences to assist in understanding the beauty of shared global consciousness, transform and shift, curiously test the theory of quantum randomization and possibility to change the life path or shift into a new, better space and time. And the last one is bring a trash bag. Be respectful of the environment and always leave the place you traveled to better than what it was before. And the next part after reading the tenets is the pro tips, which state randonauts with a positive mindset, bring a trash bag to help the environment. If you normally wouldn't go adventure alone, go with a friend or a group. Randonauting is best done as a daytime activity. Always randonaut with a charged phone. Use situational awareness. Be respectful of property owners. Never trespass. Obey all quarantine curfew and social distancing regulations in your area. Do not go into dangerous areas. And finally, happy randonauting. Then if you click the location pinpoint and start your adventure, the app itself runs on a point system for free users, and each pinpointed location that it generates costs you 1 point. And of course, there's some in-app purchases that you can make to get some more locational points, but you apparently get 15 points per day. The next question it asks is, what would you like to get? Attractors are dense clusters of random points. Voids are vastly different as they are more spread out and more remote. and anomalies are the strongest out of the attractors and the voids. Of course, if you want some darker subject matter, that's probably the one you're going to go with out of the anomalies since they're the strongest one of all of them. Then it asks you if you'd like to input your range. Temporal is the most used as it connects to your phone and tells you to focus on your intent while it generates a location for you. Now, do you really think that you can will something into fruition? Do you think that with this arguable supercomputer at your hands, sending you to a random generated point, you can subconsciously find what you're looking for? And could it unearth your deepest desires, answer the hardest of questions, or make you face off with your worst fears? Some users have experienced it actually working in the exact way that they wanted, and some bit off a little bit more than they could chew. Now for this episode, I'm going to give you a few stories about people who have found what they were looking for, but I'm also going to be making my first venture into the Randonaut world, and I'll be going to 3 separate points with 3 different intents, and see if this app is really just a random pinpoint where you use your own perception to judge if your intent is there, or if it's really some sort of a shady app that's cleverly disguised as a fun adventure. We might find that answer in this episode. But I'm also warning you that the audio for my adventure is a little bit hard on the ears, so I've done my best to manipulate the audio so it doesn't peak as much as it should. Here's an idea of what it will sound like.
Well, I just got into my car and I'm currently driving to the gas station because I need to get a little bit of gas, and I do have a mask on. I have AirPods in, so I'm not talking straight into my phone, but I'm being careful, I'm being safe, I'm not texting or anything else. Let's go ahead and get this adventure going.
There has been many tales of users' intent being money or wealth, then they follow the GPS coordinates and happen to find a little bit of cash on the ground. But with what I want to do with this one is I want a strong emotional reaction out of this app. I really want to know if it's randomly generated or maybe if it's going off of a user's experience with it, and maybe it's taken people to the same spot twice after they've given the app some feedback. I've only pinpointed one location, but it was from my house and the pin dropped in someone else's backyard, and I'm not about to go trespassing. So with this one, I'm choosing 3 different intents or topics to be my motivating factors, and for each intent, I have one story of another user who experienced the same thing. Here I am with my first intent.
Okay, I think I'm ready to go. I just opened up the Randonautica app, and I did drive to a gas station that's kind of on the outskirts of Dayton due to the fact that I didn't want it to drop me in like a residential area because I don't want to trespass. But I have the app open, sending my location now. Okay, so it gives me the option of anomaly, attractor, or void, but it says that anomalies are the strongest of attractors and voids. And then I'm setting my radius to 1,000 meters. So it could take me out into the middle of fucking nowhere. And that's the largest radius that you can have. So I'm going to go with anomaly. And I'm thinking of tragedy. Okay. Well, I have my location. All right. Let's get going with this. It says I'll be there in 13 minutes, and it is 7.9 miles.
Tragedy, sorrow, sadness. An unbearable feeling of being crushed, or an event that could have taken the lives of somebody. Of course, this garners a very strong emotional reaction. There has been many tragedies in Dayton, one of them happening a little over a year ago. But I wanted this one to be the first one that I start off with. Reddit has a sub that's r/randonauts, and people generally put in what they were looking for and what they actually found when they got to that location. On Monday, June 29th of 2020, a Reddit user by the name of small_pink had posted, "I asked for anything to do with my best friend who committed suicide 2 years ago, and I saw a raven and it dropped a feather, and she said that if she was to have a spirit animal, it would be a raven." The tragedy of losing a friend to suicide can be one of the most crushing experiences that anybody ever deals with. But with suicide, there usually comes a reason as to why they might have taken their own life, but usually leaves more questions than answers. And as I've said before, it's usually a permanent solution to what can be a temporary problem. And it's extremely unfortunate, and most people these days have known of somebody who has taken their own life. On Small Pink's subreddit post, they actually posted the picture of the feather, and it's a raven feather, 100%. And that reminds me that mental health is a very real issue that a lot of us struggle with, and a lot of us don't know how to cope with. And it can sometimes have an incredibly tragic response or event such as suicide. But that is never the answer, and there are always people who are willing to listen to you, willing to help you, and you don't have to live your entire life in the current state of mind that you have. Especially with COVID right now, and a lot of us just being emotionally and mentally exhausted. But I thought that this one would fit well with tragedy, because although this person's friend committed suicide 2 years ago, it's a natural response to find a connection with something in nature, and whether it's by sheer happenstance or deliberate, sometimes just that little reminder can be enough to keep somebody in your thoughts for the rest of your life. I thought that was a good one. So here's what I found when I went through Randonautica and looking for tragedy.
So, turn down my AC. So I'm coming up to my pin, and I'm at the Beaver Creek School District in Beaver Creek, Ohio. I mean, luckily there is a parking lot, so I'm about to go to the actual point. Let's see if it does anything, or if there's anything there at that point. Alright kids, we're here. Let's see if there's anything there. I'm at the point, and I'm literally just standing in a grass field. Yeah, maybe this one was just a bust. Alright, we'll try another one.
So with my first venture, there wasn't really anything there that anybody would see as tragic. I didn't go into any research to see if there was any tragic events that have happened in that particular spot, but of course, that's not the only spot that I was going to be going to. When you finish with your Randonaut expedition, it actually lets you write a review about what your experience was like when you got to your destination. It will also let you upload videos or pictures about what you had found and then let you characterize what you were feeling during the venture and when you actually got to the point. But like I said, although I didn't really see anything in this one, I'm not going to stop with doing just one randonauting experience.
Okay, so let's do another one. So I'm gonna choose Anomaly again, and I'm gonna use Temporal for my phone. My intent is fear. Okay, Anomaly found. Gonna open it up in Maps. It looks like it's a 13-minute drive away. So, alright, here we go again. Let's see if fear triggers an effect. I will be back.
Maybe fear would actually bring something a little more unsettling to my adventurer. Fear is defined as an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that someone or something is dangerous, likely to cause pain or a threat. And with some randonauters, you can definitely tell that fear was an emotional reaction that they definitely felt.
So I just went randonauting. I just went randonauting, and our intention was death. And we were on our way to the spot, and I look out my window, and there's someone laying in the gutter with their wife literally, like, on them, holding them. And so I parked and got out, and he got shot. And then she gave me the phone, and I had to call the cops. And Darius he wrapped his jacket around the wound. And then the cops came, and we got questioned, and I just had to leave. And I just dropped Darius off.
The voice you just heard was a TikTok user by the name of McKenna Ray, an 18-year-old woman using the Randonautica app with her friend Darius, and her intention that she put in was death. She was located in Aurora, Colorado on the night of June 24th of 2020 when she was using it. When she uploaded that video to TikTok, apparently a ton of users were chastising her for choosing death as her intent. In her defense, she had said that she had tried it multiple times and none of the intents that she had used brought anything relevant to what her intent was actually supposed to be. She had said that she was just looking for an adventure and didn't think that choosing death as her intent would bring anything sinister at all. You have to admit, we've all been young, 18 or younger, and just, let's say, messing around with an Ouija board, thinking that nothing bad is ever gonna happen. And to be honest, I've used one and never had anything bad really happen. But in her follow-up videos, she mentioned that she was in the area of Colfax in the town of Aurora, which can sometimes be a very treacherous area of town. Now, Aurora, Colorado is no stranger to tragedy, and after many randonauting expeditions, she had decided to go with her friend to the location that was about 10 miles away from where she was at. When she got there, she had said that she had seen a woman on the ground covering a man, and they slowed down to see what was going on. But that's when the woman approached her vehicle and begged them to call the police. The man that she had found had been shot below the ribs in a random incident, and her friend Darius had gotten out of her car to help apply pressure to the wound, while McKenna talked to the police dispatcher and waited for police and paramedics to arrive on scene. Now, some people will call someone's bluff on something like this, but the thing about it was I found a link on denverpost.com that actually spoke about a number of shootings in a 48-hour period in Aurora. One person was a 33-year-old man by the name of Carlos Brabson. and he was found at about 12:10 a.m. on the 23rd of June in a parking lot at the Sable Cove condos, and after the police had found him, he succumbed to his injuries. The death of Carlos is being investigated as a homicide, and they are still on the look for a suspect at the time of this article. But on the next day, there was an incident at the Easy Pond located at 797 Peoria Street at around 4:40 in the afternoon, where a 26-year-old man by the name of Ricardo Herrera and a 28-year-old man by the name of Keith Smith Jr. had both died in an apparent shootout with each other. The next incident they discussed was a 26-year-old man by the name of Stephen Minks Morgan, who was arrested and charged with first-degree murder of a person at a campground near South Parker Road and South Peoria Street, where he allegedly stabbed to death an unnamed 33-year-old person. Now, the one that I'm assuming that McKenna had seen was a report at about 11 o'clock p.m. on the 24th of June, where the police had received multiple calls about shots being fired at the intersection of East 7th Avenue and Laredo Street, where they found a 23-year-old man who had suffered a gunshot wound. The following day, the police had stated that they did not have a suspect in custody, but the victim was being treated at a hospital and is expected to survive. In a written statement, the interim police chief of Aurora Police Department had stated that the violence was extremely concerning. She also stated, quote, "Our investigators have been tirelessly working to bring justice and resolution to a number of these cases," also stating, "We need our community's assistance to ensure that the ones involved are held responsible for their actions," end quote. But I'm honestly wondering if the 23-year-old man was the one that McKenna had seen, since she had also stated in her follow-up videos that the man that she had found was expected to survive. But she also states that you shouldn't manifest death or anything of that sort in the app, because sometimes you'll get more than you could ever bargain for. But because of her experience, I honestly just hope that she's doing okay to this day, and honestly, I think that we can all personally thank her for her selflessness and keeping herself together when she called the police in the first place. With her and her friend Darius's help, they quite possibly could have been the ones to help save this man's life. So I wouldn't say this is necessarily too much of a bad thing, but a lot of people have told McKenna that this is what you get when you start thinking about death as your intent. But do you think this could have been a random experience? I mean, it was close to where she said it was located, off of Colfax, but she even stated that it was known to have some transient activities and not really be the best parts of town. Or do you think that maybe this app does have something to do with it? Because you can make your reports at the end of your journey, and maybe if you're thinking about death or fear, maybe what it'll want to send you to is an area that's been reported as being synonymous with those traits or characteristics. But getting back to my journey, what did I find when I was looking for fear as my intent?
So this one may be a bust because it pulled me up outside of the town of Yellow Springs, and it's somebody's property, unfortunately. So yeah, I'd probably be pretty fearful if I went out to someone's house in rural Ohio to come scope out their land and see if I can find something scary. But yeah, I think this one is a total bust.
So at this point, I am 0 for 2 on trying to find any kind of rationalization or reasoning with my intent and what I find. But you know that this isn't the last one I'm going to do. With fear, McKenna wasn't looking for fear, but she definitely found it. And although she was looking for death, the man had survived from the gunshot wound. So I'm pretty sure you can already guess which one I'm choosing for my final intent.
So I'm going to do it one more time. You know what? I'm just going to go yes without the report. Okay. To do one more, I'm going to click Anomaly, Temporal Phone, Focus on my intent. Death. Alright, we've got our point generated, and it looks like it's about 11 miles away. Gonna head out that way. I will be back. We'll report.
Come on, you know I'm gonna choose death. I was a little hesitant, but, call me a skeptic. Call me whatever you will. If it brought me to some death, so be it. Maybe I would die on my way doing it. I mean, I wouldn't be here right now talking to you if that was the case. But maybe something will come up, third time's a charm. We'll find out. But when using the Randonautica app, what if you're not looking for death per se, but you actually find it?
Guys, we found a suitcase at the
Gabby, go. I'll hold your stuff.
I don't know.
Bro. Wait, open it.
Me and we were like, we're gonna find nothing.
Open it.
It was sweet.
It stinks, y'all.
It washed up. It's
Oh. Oh. Okay, so she's calling the police so we can see if it's actually a dead body or it's just food.
Found a suitcase on the lawn and an outside beach. And
Yeah, here's the crime scene.
The person you heard in the video is a user by the name of Henry. He posted that TikTok on the 20th of June of 2020. As you can hear, he and his friends came across a suitcase while randonauting. I can't say for sure what they put as their intent when they went on their little expedition, but they found themselves at the Duwamish Head area in West Seattle. What you can't visually see in this podcast is a black zip-up suitcase, and inside was several thick black trash bags. When they stumbled upon the suitcase, they could tell that it kind of stunk quite a bit. But curiosity got the best of them. What could be inside? Money, as he thought it could be? Rotten food? The final words of the Zodiac Killer as written by Senator Ted Cruz? Just so you know, I'm never going to stop trashing on Ted Cruz. But they unzipped the suitcase and found the trash bags, and when they flipped over the remaining flap, they were overwhelmed with the smell of decomposition. You heard in the video that they called the police, and they had shown up and cornered off the scene because, just as you can imagine, inside of those bags were human remains. Not only did they find the one suitcase that the teens had called in about, but they searched the area and found another bag filled with human remains inside of the water. The investigators had called in the King County Medical Examiner to take the remains away, and after an autopsy, they had determined that there were 2 individuals who were dismembered and stuffed inside of the bags after suffering multiple gunshot wounds. One 36-year-old female by the name of Jessica Lewis and one 27-year-old male by the name of Austin Wenner were the 2 people who were eventually identified. Jessica had died due to multiple gunshot wounds, and Austin was killed by a single gunshot wound. Jessica was a mother of 4 children and had been dating Austin, who went by the nickname Cash, for several years. The Seattle Police Department is still continuing after their deaths were ruled as a homicide, and as of right now, there are no solid leads on who could have done this or why they would have done this as of yet, but the police are also treating this as an isolated incident and is not related to any other homicides in the area. Unfortunately, no answers have been given, so Jessica's aunt had set up a GoFundMe page in hopes of raising $10,000 in reward money to anyone who can help lead to the arrest and capture of who might have done this to two seemingly innocent people. Her aunt had referred to Jessica as a ray of sunshine and has no idea why someone would do something like this. But as her aunt also said, somebody knows something. So if there is anyone out there who might have any information about this case, the Seattle Police Department tip line can be reached at area code 206-233-5000. As for Ugg Henry and his friends, it seems like life has kind of gone on as normal. But this one app and this one random spot had led them to a discovery that pretty much nobody would ever want to find. I guarantee that these kids will remember this day for the rest of their lives, but hopefully their discovery will eventually lead to the capture of those who could have done this to Jessica and Austin, and maybe one day that person will be served some swift justice. So I guess my question for you is, do you think that you could subconsciously will something into reality? That when you tap on give me a location with this app and you're thinking about something, whether it be money, fame, fortune, something undiscovered, or something more grim like tragedy, fear, or death, that somehow this app can bring that to the forefront right in front of you? Let's talk about what I found when I was thinking of death as my intent.
Okay, and I'm back. It's a lot easier to do this when I actually write a script, but, kind of ad-libbing right now. So the topic or intent that I had was death. It actually brought me back into the Dayton area as far as residential. Again, this may turn out to be absolutely nothing, but it could be something. I guess we'll only find out when we get there. I'm less than a couple hundred feet away. And yeah, it's a house. It's a big house with a big brown door, and that's it. Like, the marker was actually on the street, and I didn't see anything. So with the stories that I've covered in this episode, you have to keep in mind there's close to 1 billion people who use TikTok. And these people will have their intent. There are stories of people finding money, and their intent was wealth, and they found like a $20 bill or something.
So the area that it took me to was definitely residential. Nothing really out of the norm. A couple of people were outside looking at a car, and there was really nothing that was eventful. But the thing about it was that area that it took me down was a street that took me off of my way to get home, but another street rerouted me around to come out on the same area, but not the way that I went in. And I found something when I was on my way back out.
Okay, this could just be like coincidence, But on my way back out of this little cul-de-sac that I just drove into, there is an animal who has supposedly been hit by a car. And I don't know if that necessarily constitutes it, but I mean, I'm not going to get out and, to be honest, I mean, I talked about the Jeff shirts, but it was a raccoon. And it was probably, I mean, it's got to be less than 1/10 of a mile away from where my pin was actually at. Could be coincidence. That is death, in a sense. But I don't know. Anyways, I'm gonna let regular Hunter with the not shitty audio quality actually finish up this episode. So this was interesting, though. I will say that it was interesting. It was fun. I will say, like, it is an adventure. So if that's the pure purpose of Randonautica, then I'd say that, definitely an adventure. But, alright, I'm out.
Well, thank you. I mean, I guess you can consider this one pre-production, Hunter. But yeah, I saw an animal on the road, and unfortunately it was a raccoon. But do you think that maybe that was just coincidence? Or do you think that maybe the raccoon, similar to the raccoon that is now on my new t-shirts, was a kind of a sign of some sort? Or did I will that into existence? I can't say for sure. I did enjoy my time with Randonautica because it took me outside of the Dayton area. I got a little bit of fresh air, and yeah, it was pretty cool. But I don't know if this is some sort of as people like to say, with Randonautica, it's a simulation. It verifies that we are all living in a simulation. But I can't say that for sure, because coincidences happen. Whether it's your intent to find death, or sadness, or fear, or happiness, and beauty, and life, you never know what you're gonna find. But do I think people should maybe do it? Maybe just once. If you don't find what you're looking for, I mean, it could be that's just the way that the world works. But if it does bring you what you're thinking about, it does bring you your intent, then maybe there is something hiding beneath the surface of this one app of the 2.2 million on the Apple App Store that could have a little bit something more sinister behind the veil. I don't know. That's for you to decide. So, what do you think about it? Let me know. Feel free to contact me. You can reach out to me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Murder and Such, or you can follow me personally on Twitter, Instagram, the PlayStation Network, and Snapchat at Huntor27. I would also love to thank my executive producer patrons, such as Brad Hyatt, Kyle Wesley, Casey Jones, Natalie Stern, Laura McDonald, Jenna Kagawa, Martha Pierce, Alex Aguirre, Justin Reebsum, McKenna Nicole, Ariel Saphir, Stacy Jenks, Dan Sheridan, Benjamin Welch, William T. Dawson, Sarah Thompson, Rambo Stanley, Erica Summers, Danielle Longamore, Nature vs. Narcissism, Dakota Curtis, Ashley Black and Tech Support, and of course, Big Daddy Thick Dick. And if you would like to join the executive producers or just throw me a buck or two, you can find the Patreon at patreon.com/murderandsuch. And don't forget that I also have t-shirts that you can order that will be shipping very soon. But as always, I thank you for listening to the show. I thank you for telling a friend. please remember to call someone that you love today. And wash your fucking hands and wear a mask. I love you, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.